Would you be willing to close your mind? It's very interesting to study the culture and how it changes throughout the generations. And it's interesting to look at the trends and look at the things that we cling to. Like what comes to mind when you think about today's culture? For me, I jump to two things: the rise of the digital age and the rise of postmodernism. The rise of the digital age means like everything is on our phones, and because of it, our attention span is horrible. Um, at the beginning of the year, my husband and I spent time with his sister and brother-in-law and his side of the family. Unlike me, unlike mine, they're all readers. And so we had some downtime, the conversation went quiet, and immediately everyone decided to do their own thing. It was great, but I was not prepared. But I knew I didn't want to spend all of my downtime on social media because, well, social media. So anyway, I was like, let's try out this reading thing, or rather, maybe it's a good time to get back into reading. And this journey of getting back into reading um, was very revealing, let's say that. Like, it just revealed how bad my attention span had become over the years. Like, there's only so many pages I can read before I have the urge to check my phone. Like, my first thought at 4:30 a.m. in the morning is to check my phone and to check social media. But at the same time, like, our entire life is on our phones. Like, the way that we communicate with one another, our notes, our calendar, our photos, our everything. Like, man, it is so easy to just access information. Like, before the internet, what did you do when you were feeling unwell? Like, wait to see a doctor, or maybe just go about your normal life and just wait to see if your symptoms kill you. But now you can just plug in your symptoms into the internet, and within 5 seconds you can figure out if you're dying or not. It's great. So we live in this digital age where everything is at our fingertips. And we also see the rise and the presence of this postmodernist society, and it's this idea that truth changes. What we know today might be different than what we know tomorrow. Postmodernism says there is no absolute truth, and because of it, well, it's best to have an open mind about everything. And I think it's good and healthy to have an open mind about certain things, like trying new foods or hobbies, but I think in other areas it's extremely foolish. Like, can you imagine how foolish it would be to have a quote open mind about racism or murder or abuse? Like, can you imagine if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. like kept an open mind? He would have been far less powerful, far less influential, and far less remembered. Would you be willing to close your mind about certain things? Listen, I'm a researcher at heart. Like, there are certain podcasts, certain books that I want to read or I'm encouraged to read, but there's a part of me that dreads it and almost just avoids it because I know how I am. I'll listen and I'll become invested to the point where I will like hide in a room for like 2 to 7 days just reading, investigating, researching, and doing this whole deep dive until I feel like I'm an expert in whatever the subject is. Like, there are certain topics that my that my husband encourages me to look into, but my response to him like is, I'm curious, but you know how I am, I know how I am. I don't want to disappear all weekend. So no conspiracy theories for me. Do you know who Dr. Bart Ehrman is? He's got a story and a big following. Actually, he's a New Testament scholar with his main focus on textual criticism. And what's particularly interesting about Dr. Bart Ehrman is he studied under Dr. Bruce Metzger, who was a professor at Princeton Theological Seminary, and he's like thought to be one of the greatest textual critics. Like, he created the standard, which was essentially the starting point for all New Testament translations. Very brilliant man. And what's interesting is that based on Bruce Metzger's findings, like, he found the Bible to be trustworthy and that Jesus truly is Lord. Ehrman, on the other hand, who again studied under Bruce, like studied all the same stuff, but he jumped to the conclusion that the Bible is untrustworthy and therefore the Christian faith isn't relevant. It's not worth seeking. And so, all that being said, like, the researcher that I am, I read the book that has driven so many people away from the Christian faith, Misquoting Jesus by Dr. Bart Ehrman. I read it in like less than a week, and I found it to be pretty convincing. And I mean, it's a good book until you decide to research what he says. But I am so off topic. That's probably I'll talk about Dr. Ehrman on another podcast. But like, all of this to say is that, like, I know what it's like to crave truth. I know what it's like to just want to research. I know what it's like to get stuck in this trap, in this cycle of investigating and investigating. I know how easy it is to just keep an open mind. But I was listening to a sermon by Pastor Chris Hilkin of San Diego Church. I listen to him a lot. A lot of my content is just what he teaches at San Diego Church, and he's a really, man, he's got a story. But he's very good at just articulating what the Bible says. And so anyway, he was just talking about this idea of just closing your mind, and that has just been in my thoughts constantly. Would you be willing to close your mind? Would you be willing to just cling onto your beliefs? Like, I'm a nerd with an obsessive personality. Like, I was so fascinated by Christian apologetics and the study of trying to understand our universe that I've read a countless amount of books. I've studied every argument, and so much of what I've researched, I've documented either through this podcast or through my blog or through both. And like, spoiler alert, like, even with all that I've learned, you still have to make some sort of leap, no matter like what worldview you decide to follow. Why? Well, it's because we don't have all the answers. Cosmology isn't science in its true sense, where we can observe, measure, test. Like, science looks at data that's repeatable. Like, you can't use science to determine the beginning of the universe because the universe expanded. The universe started once, and you and I weren't here to see it. So, like, whatever you believe, it requires some sort of leap. But friend, all I want to say is, like, study, test, explore this world, but don't forget to just cling, hold on, and stay true to what you believe. Like, you go about this world with an open mind, but man, once you find something that is right or wrong, close your mind, friend. Close, hold, and keep, and stay consistent. Like, you can say that there is no truth, man, but like, you gotta be consistent with it. And that means you can't make these moral claims. It's just, I don't know, it's just something that's just been on my mind lately, of just, we tell culture to just have an open mind, but no, close your mind. Close, hold, and keep. You know, the Bible is unique in the way that no matter what claim is put out by the generation, the Bible seems so perfectly countercultural in some way. Like, it's almost like we try to figure out how to do life, and God was like, I have something better. I have a way that works, and it's all written down. 66 separate books with 40 different authors, all inspired by God, all held together by one spine, which we refer to as the Bible today. It's almost like we can't figure it out ourselves, or we've tried and we've failed over and over again. You know, today's culture begs us to have an open mind, and the most offensive thing you can do is to close it. And I've been thinking about that and meditating on it, and I just want to take this time and space to share what I've closed my mind on. Like, I'm not here to make this big case for Christ. I just want to plant the seed. As you study, test, and explore the world. So stay with me and hear me out. You don't have to trust the universe. You don't have to just hope that things work out. You don't have to just believe that things happen for a reason. You don't have to be scared of death. You don't have to wonder what happens after we die. Because there's another way to do life, and it's by following Jesus. And I don't know what you've tried. I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what you believe about this Jesus. But 2,000 plus years ago, he walked this earth, and Jesus performed miracles in front of crowds, and he claimed to be God. And when it comes to the existence of God, Dr. Bart Ehrman says this: this is not even an issue for scholars of antiquity. The reason for thinking Jesus existed is because he is abundantly attested in early sources. If you want to go where the evidence goes, I think that atheists have done themselves a disservice by jumping on the bandwagon of mythicism. Because frankly, it makes you look foolish to the outside world. If that's what you're going to believe, you look foolish. So what he's saying is that it's foolish to believe that Jesus never existed. Like, we have more evidence on the existence of Jesus than any other person in history. The crucifixion of Jesus is the most well-attested, best documented event in all of history. Christians, non-Christians, and even anti-Christians, really, like, the most brilliant and known scholars can agree on these 4 facts when it comes to the crucifixion. Jesus of Nazareth died on a Roman cross and laid in a tomb. That tomb was empty Sunday morning. Several individuals, including skeptics, experienced what they took to be the resurrected Jesus. And lastly, the belief in the resurrection transformed their lives and launched a movement that altered history. I've explored every possible explanation. I've looked at the evidence, and what I've come to realize is that the resurrection of Jesus makes the most sense. It's more reasonable to believe that than to believe that Jesus swooned, to believe that robbers stole the body, disciples stole the bodies, people experienced hallucinations, the dogs ate the body, and I've closed my mind on this, on this idea that the resurrection makes the most sense, and that is what happened. I've closed my mind on this. And unless we ever run into, like, trustworthy evidence that shows that Jesus' body is somewhere on this earth, because, like, look, man, if we find that, the Christian faith is dead, and I'll be the first one out. But I don't think that's going to happen. I believe Jesus really did die on the cross and was resurrected 3 days later. He claimed to be God and proved it by fulfilling well over 300 messianic prophecies. And that's incredible news. Like, this is incredible news because, that means the Son of God really did walk this earth. Everything he said, Everything that happened, everything that we read about in the Bible is true. It was true yesterday, it's true today, and it's true forever, man. And that means that there is another way to do life. You don't have to trust the universe. You don't have to roll the dice. You don't have to wait until the stars align. The author of the universe created you with purpose. He loves you unconditionally. And man, that means that there's a way out, and that's great news. That is the greatest news. There is a way out, and it's through Jesus alone. Romans 10:9 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. It sucks to go through life's unknowns, but it doesn't have to. One of the greatest things about following Jesus is a certainty that comes with it. There is peace, there is comfort, because God is good and God is in control. Man, can you just, there's a better way to do life, and it's understanding that God is in control. But one of the books that I'm reading is Prayer by Tim Keller, which is about prayer. But one of the most powerful truths in the book is this. So Tim Keller, quoting John Calvin, says this: God grants our prayer, even if he does not always respond to the exact form of our request. Even when he does not comply with our wishes, he is still attentive and kindly to our prayers, so that hope relying upon his word will never disappoint us. Keller concludes, God will either give us what we ask or give us what we would have asked if we knew everything he knew. There's certainty with Christ. There's hope with Christ. And I just invite you to seek Jesus. Read the Bible. Hear the good news found in the gospel alone. And let your heart and your mind be radically changed. Bite down, cling, keep, and hold. Jesus changes everything. Absolutely everything, in the way that you see yourself, the way you see other people, the way you see the world. And there's more joy, and there's more peace, and there's certainty, and there's grace, and there's love, and there's forgiveness. And there is nothing better than just abiding in him and finding your comfort in him. Jesus changed my life, and he can change yours too. As you go and test and explore this world, I encourage you to just read the Bible and let your heart and your mind be transformed by the gospel. Jesus changes everything.